Would you like a 50-year mortgage loan on your house at 7% interest? Hey, it'll lower your monthly payment by a couple $100. Doesn't that sound nice? I forgot to tell you about the part where if you buy a $400,000 house, you're going to be paying me back $1.2 million. It'll be fine, right? Nothing wrong with that. Couldn't have anything to do with theology or morality, right? You couldn't be more wrong about that, right? Usury. I'd like to talk to you today about usury. St. Thomas tells us that usury is to receive anything beyond the principal in a mutuum loan. That is, a loan of a thing by which it, by its nature, is consumed in its use. So things that are consumed in their use, like food, wine, or money, they're gone after you use them. That's a mutuum loan. Receiving interest, charging interest on a mutuum loan is a mortal sin. It is intrinsically evil. It is wicked. And everyone who did it used to be excommunicated from the church. This doctrine became really clear in the 4th century and was really clearly taught in the church up through the 18th century, that all interest on consumptive loans was intrinsically evil. Why? Is a banker really that evil of a guy? Because it preys on the poor. Who are the people taking out loans? Who are the people that are forced to borrow money at interest even? It's the poor people, right? The rich people aren't the ones who are worried about taking out loans at interest. It's the poor. So preying on the poor, especially with contracts that are that have exploitative terms, like 2%, 3% interest on a large amount doesn't seem like that much. And hey, maybe the poor people are too stupid to understand what's going on. Maybe it's fine. No, it's not fine, because you end up even with a very modest home. Let's say you buy a home for $250,000 at 3% interest. 3% was like really, really low. It was back in like 2020, 2021. It was about 3% federal interest rate. You're going to end up paying back almost $500,000, even on a 30-year loan. And now they're suggesting 50-year loans? That's the solution? Total debt slavery by the poor to the rich. So it's not an amoral issue. It's not an oblique financial point to make that charging interest for a loan is evil. It's actually a foundational moral issue. Remember that guy, born of a virgin, died on a cross, rose from the dead? You remember that guy? Jesus? He has a lot to say about the poor. As a matter of fact, he said, if you come to me on that day and say, Lord, Lord, and I say, depart from me, I never knew you. And you act all surprised and you go, wait, when did I ever meet you? I was hungry and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me nothing to drink. I needed shelter and you didn't take me in. You remember that? The poor are dear to our Lord's heart, and exploiting them through financial greed is really quite the big deal. It's not a minor point. It is a mortal sin. Why don't we hear about this anymore? Well, it's not because the church changed her doctrine, as some people like Noonan have suggested. No, the church doesn't change her doctrine. It's just a practical shift. This practical shift started in the early 19th century, where we still have some of these letters on record from bishops to their confessors, where basically the church just stopped practically enforcing her authority when it came to talking about usurious practices. You get these letters to confessors saying, well, don't disturb the penitent. If someone comes and confesses, hey, I've been charging interest on all these loans I've been exploiting the poor. As long as they have a general tone that they want to amend their life, don't make it part of their penance that they can't do that anymore. That's really interesting, right? It strongly contrasts people in the Bible like Zacchaeus, who had been engaged in financial fraud and who had been exploiting the poor, who say, Lord, behold, if I've taken anything, I give it back fourfold. And now we're sort of just practically sitting back and going, well, we don't want to disturb people. And listen, I'm not trying to criticize the church. I'm not trying to take shots at the church, but I'm just saying there needs to be a really good explanation for this. Why did we stop talking about usury? And isn't it interesting that when we stopped talking about usury, 1 century later, we've got the rise of the debt crisis. And 2 centuries later, we're in some real trouble. The United States of America is in more debt than ever by a large margin. The numbers are not even conceivable. Trillions are not even conceivable by the average person. But forget the national debt. How about individual debt? How many times do we have to talk about the average age of the home buyers going up and up and up and up? Nobody can afford a home. People are renting, which is, in some ways just burning your money. So who's really suffering at the bottom of all this? The poor. We are in a financial exploitation of the poor. So how could this not be a moral issue? Now, the modern Catholic Catechism says in 2449, the church has rejected the practice of usury, which is the charging of exorbitant interest. Usurious and avaricious dealings are to be condemned. Boy, that word exorbitant is doing a lot of work there, isn't it? Exorbitant means like over and abundantly, too much, excessively. So you could read that by saying, well, I only mean that you can't charge interest that's too high. You can charge a little bit of interest, but not a lot. Or you could read it as a modifier of the word interest, meaning like all interest is exorbitant. Well, we have to look at the church tradition in order to interpret which one of those two things is true. We could look at the Council of Lyon. We could look at the Council of Vienne, the Fifth Lateran Council. We could talk about how many various popes have explicitly condemned the lending of money and interest as intrinsically evil. And we could look at St. Thomas Aquinas, Doctor of the Church, who clearly tells us exactly what it is and says that it's wrong. Why is it so wrong? Well, we're exploiting the poor. How are we exploiting them? We're selling them something that's not real. We're selling them something that doesn't exist. You're running the money of the rich through the accounts of the poor and then back into the accounts of the rich with extra added on. And what are you doing? At best, you could say, well, I'm trying to sell them my time, but you're not really. You're not putting in any time. You have your money. And now it's even worse. It's fiat currency, but you have your currency running through their accounts and back to you. You never lose charge of your money. Every single one of these contracts involves the possibility of repossessing the home or repossessing the car or whatever it is. So you're not really losing anything when you run your money through the accounts of the poor. Anyway, I'll let the economists and the mathematicians work out exactly how this is really exploitative. But I only wanted to raise this issue because now it's bubbling to the surface again. People are really starting to remember the church's teaching on usury, that the charging of any interest on any mutuum loan is intrinsically evil. It's exploitative. It's avaricious. It's greedy. There's no reason for us to be quiet about it. In fact, it's time for us to start talking about it again.